okay? So let's talk about functions. We talked about print, and this is from our function reference inside Canvas. Every function in the reference has a description. It shows you how to use that function. It has an example, and it has the parameters for that function. Those are the things that you may or may not need to tell that function. Now, the print function, like all functions, requires parentheses. Most functions are all lowercase as well, at least the built-in functions. The ones that we will make later, the custom functions, may not be. But print has one or more required objects to print. And it says objects because it can be a variable, it can be a number, it can be a string, it can be a list, like it can be lots of different things. So objects. And I can also print more than one thing. So if I say, have these two variables, one's text and one's a number, I can print them. I can print str text, but if I want to print both of them on the same line, I can just throw a comma in there and it'll print both of them. Now, it's printing one and then the other. And the way that I know that is because it inserts a space in between them automatically. So when I print multiple objects using a comma and without any other characters, it prints a space in between them. And I can even say, throw in another string there with another comma, and it'll just print them all out. It'll print them on one line. So print takes one or more objects as required. And if I want to, I can change the separator. So I know this is small, but you can go back and read this later. SEP equals, I can give it a string argument as a separator. So if I say SEP equals, let's say I use the %sign. Now when I run that, it will print those out with a %sign separating them. So this takes several different arguments, but this is an optional argument. And any optional argument has a default value, and the default value for the separator is a space. But if I want to change it, I can. So print is super useful, very versatile, can do a lot of things. We'll use that a lot. But there are many, many other functions in Python. So let's talk about some of those other functions. First, though, I want to talk through something because this will be sort of a reoccurring theme throughout the class. There are two different ways a function can interact with your code. The first way, as with print, is for the function to do something. It does something. It prints something out, it saves a file, it deletes something, it does something. It doesn't necessarily do something visible, but it does something. The other functions might return something. And what that means is when I execute that function, the result of that function gets returned back to Python. And I have to do something with whatever it returns. It'll send back a little bit of data to me. And I have to catch that in a variable. In other words, put it in a container, save it for later. Or I could print it, or I could do something else with it. But some functions actually do something and return something. So we'll get into all of those types. But the next function I'm going to share with you is a return something function. And it's called the type function. The type function takes a variable and it returns whatever data type is in that. So it's very useful if you want to understand what data type a variable is. So let's look at that. So if I say type int number like that. It takes a variable as an argument, and it's going to return whatever the type is. Now, if I run this, I don't see anything. And the reason is type is a return something type of function. So it returns something, but if I don't do something with what it returns, it just goes away. It falls into the void because I didn't catch it in a variable. I didn't print it. So if I want to, I can do something called nesting. I can put that function inside another function. And it basically says type is going to tell me what type of variable int number is. And then whatever it returns is going to be passed to the print function so that it does something with it. So it's going to print the result of the innermost function. And notice we start at the inside and work our way to the outside with nested functions like this. So when I print that, it says class int. If I change it to the other variable, it'll say class string. So that tells me what kind of variable that is. The other way that I can handle a return something is I can put it in a variable. So if I say str type equals type int number, okay, now notice if I run this, it still won't do anything visible because all I've done is I've declared two variables, and then I said, let's take the type of int number and put it in this variable. So all I have is three variables. I'm not doing anything with them. And then the program just ends and the variables go away. The variables only live until the program ends, and then the data is gone, unless you save it in a file or permanent storage. So if I want to see what's in that str type variable, I need to print it because that is how I can see it. Everybody tracking so far? Sort of, more or less, close enough. Let's take a look at one more function. This one's really fun. Some people get a little confused at first, but it's okay. I'm going to walk you through it. I'm here for you. The input function is a way that you can get input from users. And it asks a question and allows the user to type something in response. And the question that it asks is called the prompt. So let's say I have a str name equals input, and input is a return something function. So I have to catch the output of that into a variable. What is your name? So if I type that, that's the input function. It's going to print on the screen, what is your name? And it's going to wait for the user to type something. And then whatever they type goes in here. Okay? Now, a lot of people use input and they think that this right here, the prompt, goes into this string. That's not what happens. This gets printed, and then whatever the user types goes into the string or gets returned. Now, I could also nest this function just like that. That's not typically how this is used because all that would do is just reflect back what the user just typed. So I'm going to put it in a string, and then I'll print it. And I can even do a little trickery here. Your name is... Okay, so I can do that. Now when I run this, notice it says, what is your name? If I type Bill, then it reflects back, your name is Bill. Okay, now there's a better way to do this that I'm going to show you for our first assignment, or for our A2. But don't worry about that right now. Just you can, when you're playing around with this, just print it as its own separate object in that code. So input is very useful. We'll use input quite a bit, as you could probably imagine, to get input from users in our command line programs. So you will become very well versed with input